Welcome, one and all, throughout time and space for this episode of Weebs on the Weekends, the podcast where we break down the anime news highlights of the week and give a retrospective look on an anime that premiered 10 years ago. Today's episode, we will cover the third week of May 2022, after which we will follow our voice actor spotlight for Yuki Kaji and give our thoughts on whether to resurrect or rebury the 2012 anime franchise Accel World, where he voices the main character Haru. My name is Sam Martinez. I'm a part-time weeb, full-time automail mechanic, and with me as always is my co-host Jay Johnson, part-time weeb, full-time English language sensei. Now, Jay, I would have to say that this past week, it's been a pretty long week, so I had to wind down with some of my friends, and we went to a barcade that opened up in my sleepy little town, and oh my goodness, Jay, it's freaking awesome. I've told you about one barcade that was here where you can buy an armband, you can go in and you can play old school arcade games, things like that. This place was very similar to it. The cover was about $21, but it's a little bit more expensive, but the games, oh my goodness, there's so much more games over here. There is one DDR pad where the entire floor that you stand on is a pad, and it's a pressure sensor throughout the entirety of the dance floor, and you have to slide, you have to jump. It's crazy. You get all the sweat and cardio in. There was a one station that had a four-way pong type thing and another four-way air hockey type setup. It was pretty interesting seeing how barcades are becoming more and more accepted and seeing all the different games that they are importing here to see what catches on. Is there anything that happened to you this past week that was fairly interesting?
Just in terms of we have basically 1 month left of the school year, so I'm kind of slowly winding down with a lot of the AP testing. So I had students participating in the AP for chemistry and physics, as well as some for AP literature. So I had to do some monitoring duties for this week. So it was very busy. I was less in a teacher's role and more in a monitor role. So that was kind of a weird mix for my normal schedule of 26 hours of teaching independent courses. But for the weekend, I actually had to, not even for the weekend, for the past 2 days, I had to go on a business trip up north to basically the second largest city in Mongolia called Darhan. And it's very different from the capital. And I kind of forgot that, Mongolia is mostly rural. I always have a problem with that word, but it's like countryside and then city life. But then Darhan is like the second midway point. So a lot of people basically prefer Darhan over the capital because of less pollution problem, less traffic problems. And the people are, it's kind of weird going to a different city, and I haven't been there before, but it was a notable difference of, oh, I'm a foreigner again, I guess, technically. And it felt like, oh yeah, I kind of been integrated so much, or I've been normalized to just my life as a foreigner. I don't really see myself as a foreigner anymore, but a lot of people were just walking up to me and asking me questions and taking photos again. I was like, oh, well, I haven't had this for the past 3 years, so this is kind of new experience to have again. But overall, it was just a very wild ride because the capital here has no trees, but Darhan is just in a deep forest essentially. So I was like,
Oh,
oh my
so
gosh, trees.
so it's like you went into the village hidden in the leaves almost.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, it was just very scenic and it's basically springtime because it's pushing 90 degrees right now, 90 degrees Fahrenheit. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
the trees were in bloom. They had the flowers on them, and it was just the pollen was in the air, and I was like, oh, I haven't smelt pollen in probably 2 years because one, the capital doesn't have any trees, and also winters last here about I would say a good 7 to 8 months. So you're really not overwhelmed with forestry and the smell of aromatics like that. So it was a nice, refreshing trip, and I'm glad I got to do it before I go to potentially go to Japan this summer. But I guess that could be a good transition into our first news story. But yeah, anything else, Sam, you want to talk about before we head into the news?
Other than I'm jelly about your potential in going to the promised land, no, not much. I would have to say, oh, while you were in Darhan, did they have anything equivalent to cherry blossoms? I know that here in the States, at least some places in the South, they would have cherry blossom festivals, things of that nature. And I didn't know if they had something similar up there, to celebrate springtime, to celebrate the summer.
Yeah, that's very fair. I don't know if there's anywhere in Mongolia that has cherry blossoms because I know in the U.S. the one big thing is in the Washington D.C. for the cherry blossom viewing festival, as well as in Macon, Georgia. And I think those are like the two biggest groves on the East Coast. Anyways, but yeah, it was mostly pine trees in Darhan, and I'm not a
Oh, that must have been
botanist.
good smelling pine again.
It was, yeah, yeah. I was like, and I was kind of just taken back by it because every time I come back to the U.S., I'm like just looking at trees, like most of the time. I was like, oh yeah, trees are a foreign thing in the Gobi Desert, essentially, of the capital. So yeah, we can move on to the news for the week. So time codes are going to be in the description below. We're going to have two sections of our 10-year discussion after our news, but right now, talking about Japan and the least anime news story of the week is that the Japanese government has officially announced that they have plans to fully allow or to fully open their borders in June. And right now they are allowing a limited number of tourist groups to come in from specific countries. And the countries listed are the United States of America, Thailand, Australia, and Singapore. So currently the requirements are just that you have to be vaccinated with 3 shots, which I don't know what the 3 shots are supposed to be, probably the two and then the booster, I assume, but they didn't make it
Yeah.
clear inside of the mandate. But the other requirement is that you have to travel inside of a fixed tour group. You can't just travel alone or by yourself. So this is coming after their lessening of their restrictions from March, where they started to allow foreign exchange students back into the country, as well as people with business visas, raising the limit from 3,500 to 10,000, and then also lessening the quarantine mandate from 7 days to 3 days. So, Sam, before the world kind of went to pandemic hell, we actually had plans to go to Japan. So now that Japan seems to be finally opening up after kind of 2 years of forced mandates or forced quarantine, do you feel like it's a good time to go, or do you think the rush of opening the borders is best avoided and we can probably travel to Japan next year?
After reading this news story, I was thinking about going next year, seeing what my odds would be in 2023, maybe 2024, just because when I had tried to plan prior, I think it was 2020 or 2019, where I had purchased my tickets to try to go in June 2020 because it was supposed to be around the time of the Summer Olympics that were going to be held there. Just a little bit before, and with that, they were anticipating some limited views or some limited visitation. And my cousins there at the time, they were saying that uh, at least during that time when they were quarantined, that there were no real opportunities to enjoy the scenery. They had not quarantine, but they had a mandate where everybody had to go inside. It was very strict, and things closed very early during that time. So if I had visited during the time that I wanted to go, I wouldn't be able to do anything really. And as you mentioned as well, I'm assuming the quarantining days, they still have to happen even though you have your vaccinations. Like once you drop into the country, you have to be quarantined for those 3 days. Am I correct in assuming that?
Right. And I know people that have been going into Japan over these past 2 years and they not complain, but as Japan is very structured in how they handle their paperwork, it's kind of like, it's weird that this is happening now because one, I think it's because of certain things like So the World Expo is coming to Japan in 2025, and the Japanese government has been debating about allowing foreigners in, just period, because of certain things with how poorly the Olympics went. But yeah, especially with the quarantine being shut down 3 days. And oh, I only mention that because they do handle the quarantine very well. Like they have not military escorts, but definitely police armed escorts of people to make sure that nothing goes awry in the transportation of tourists. But yeah, the 3 days are mandatory, and that seems to be going to be like at least the standard from now on.
Because I would say that if I do try to go next year or the year after, I feel as though they would either reduce that quarantine or eliminate it. I would like to maximize the time that I'm there because I only have so much PTO. So those 3 days would definitely take up a lot of my time, and just be having 3 days where I am in a hotel. I'm assuming I would have to pay for all of that as well. It's not necessarily my ideal idea of fun, but I'm assuming like with your trip, you guys are taking that into accommodations.
Yeah, potentially, because again, it's one of those things of it's just a potential full reopening of Japan. So if it's not
Hmm.
actually approved next month, then we're probably going to cancel that trip. But it was just an idea other than going up fishing up north in Mongolia. But yeah, again, just change of scenery since me and my uh, potential travel companion had been stuck inside Mongolia for the past 2 years. So we're like, let's probably go somewhere now. And Japan's close enough by from the capital of Mongolia to Tokyo is 4 hours, so it's not that terribly far.
Oh yeah, I would say if you guys do get a chance to do it, go ahead and go because you only live once, right? YOLO!
All right, so now getting into not yet anime news, but let's go into some manga news because I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Vigilantes My Hero Academia
Oh, I am.
manga. Okay, good, good, good. So the next news story is that the My Hero Academia spin-off series, Vigilantes, will be ending on May 28th, so next week essentially. And this was a publication being done on Shonen Jump Plus. It started back in 2016, being done by Hideki Yuki, and again, not a Horikoshi production, so he handed over the property essentially to another writer, but has a total of
Mhm.
14 volumes right now, and it basically covers a vigilante, or at least a character, Koichi, who basically fails out from qualifying to be a hero, but is resolved to still help people, and basically takes on the role of a vigilante to, serve the people. And I think what Vigilante does is something that My Hero kind of just skims over. And I wanted to kind of get your impressions of it, or what are your, like,
Mhm.
what's good about the series. But everything I've heard about it, not reading it myself, has been overly positive. And I'm very much in the camp that with 14 volumes, that's enough for one season. So after My Hero wraps up in basically a year, because we're going into season 6 later this year, and then season 7 would technically be the final arc of the manga if Horikoshi keeps with the same pacing of manga to anime adaptation. But we have one more season of My Hero Academia, so a vigilante anime might spring up or be announced next year potentially. So would you be excited for a vigilante anime, and how is it as a manga right now?
I am really excited for it because, like, with what Vigilante does, it gives us a different perspective. So, with My Hero, we get to see things from a government supported group, people, and heroes being a career. And we, as you mentioned earlier, we get to follow this one person who couldn't get into hero school but still feels strongly about justice because of how All Might influenced him. And it's interesting as well because the character that we follow is in college age, right? So how he approaches things, it's a little bit different, and he is in school for something else. So he has a day job. It's more of your typical superhero story, right? Where you have your day job, you have your alternate ego life while you're trying to moonlight. And it's fairly funny because, like, with his powers, they don't really do a whole lot. So at the first, we see him doing really basic stuff like helping ladies cross the street, picking up garbage, things like that. And he runs into this old grizzly man that's acting as a vigilante as well. And he turns out to be a non-powered vigilante. Like, that's just how much how just how his sense of justice had impacted him. And so he gets to have this wildcat like mentor. And I say wildcat because I think that's the name of the character from DC, if I'm correct, Jay, the one that trains Black Canary. Isn't his name Wildcat? Yes. So I would have to say, like, with him, I really appreciate it because with Horikoshi, we've seen Horikoshi get influence from Marvel characters. We even see it in Vigilantes, where two characters are essentially like the Bebop and Rocksteady version of Cyclops and Wolverine. But seeing them make a Wildcat like character and then having him influence Koichi as a main character, because they it does follow with some of the storylines in My Hero. For instance, when I forgot the name of the Yakuza group, but when they were dealing with the drugs, they worked on the formula to boost people's quirks, but they focused on the reverse to nullify their quirks. And however, with vigilantes, they focused on people that were dealing the quirk boosts. And the way that they go about that story, it felt very much like a modern day hero story where they're trying to bust up a drug ring. And not only that, you also see other various ways that people can be considered a not necessarily vigilante, but on the other side of the law that would be associated with a vigilante. For instance, you see one female character that uses her quirks in an illegal way so that she can become a pop icon, right? And you also see some. I think it's Koichi's older sister. She's I just she's like in grad school for university, or she's about to become a reporter, but she is also, I think she's working on her thesis. She's working on a paper really focusing on the vigilante mentality in that superhero world, right? On those individuals who couldn't make it as a career hero but still end up becoming vigilantes anyways. So it's sort of, again, like that stereotypical hero story that we would see here in the West. That's not necessarily that still happens in the My Hero universe, even though My Hero has career heroes. So, and throughout the story, we get to see these characters run into some of the mainstream heroes that we see in My Hero. So it's a very fun ride, and I do think that it is worth a bit of a read.
So, moving on to, are we into anime yet? I think we're into anime yet. Yeah, we are into anime. So,
To the animes!
this next news story is very simple, but it was very interesting news that popped up this week. Is that Crunchyroll will be streaming Chainsaw Man, and again, this very much is not.
Oh, that's this week?
What?
You said that was this week?
What, Chainsaw Man?
Yeah.
No, just saying they will
Oh.
stream it.
Uh,
Chainsaw Man will be premiering later this year in October for the fall anime season, and Crunchyroll has just announced that they will be doing the official dub for it in their 7 languages that they are proficient in to release in broadcasting. And this is a production by Mappa Studios, and it's so odd because one, the trailer is very much a sampling, which hopefully all trailers are a sampling of the anime, but it's something that can easily be overlooked about how stacked the staff is for this anime because one, the director is the one that was responsible for Jujutsu Kaisen. The scriptwriter is the one that wrote for Attack on Titan final season. The character designer did Mushoku Tensei, Jobless Reincarnation. The art designer is from Vinland Saga, and the music composer is from Devilman Crybaby. So we talked about this before, and I think when we first
Yeah.
announced this last year, but they just threw all the money at this anime, and it shows with the staffing, it shows with the production, and how much Mappa has put into their animation budget. But yeah, it's a whole thing with publication is that they kind of keep it secret about who's going to be responsible for it. But the news is so shocking that a couple months from now, when it premieres, that Crunchyroll has already grabbed dibs, or they've probably paid out the wazoo to be able to ones to broadcast it. So I think this is just good news altogether. But Sam, since you're so excited and jumped the gun, do you want to talk about this a little bit?
Yes, because I was it was just funny. Excuse me, because when you first sent me this news story, I'm like, why'd you send this to me? I've seen the trailer. It's a pretty trailer. I don't know why you're teasing me by making me watch it again. But now I truly understand the need for the news, and it's very interesting. Well, I'm actually very glad that it shows that whoever made the deal was trying to make sure that it is getting as much exposure that it does, because I've begun to realize, as you mentioned, the 7 or 9 languages that Crunchyroll dubs everything in. I just started realizing that, like, with a lot of their more popular titles, they have those multiple dubs. The fact that they went with Crunchyroll to make sure that you have all that dub, it just makes sure, or ensures that it reaches as much of the world populace as it can. And oh my goodness, with the way that this looks, it definitely needs to do it. Like, they are making sure that this franchise does anything but fail. And I am I'm ready to look forward to it, man. I really am.
Yeah, it was just again just a small news story, but I thought it was worth noting because a lot of publishing or those broadcasting studios don't really announce it. And we even find it as soon as an anime premieres, we don't know where to find it. So now everybody knows where to find Chainsaw Man day one. So it's good news. So our next news story is again another piece of short news, but it is the announcement that Fire Force is receiving a third season. And I'm a big fan of Fire Force. Same thing with Soul Eater, and the creator Okubo is responsible for very small number of works, just Soul Eater, Soul Eater Not, and Fire Force. Now that Fire Force has wrapped earlier this year, back in February, he'll probably move on to the next work, so I'm looking very forward to that. But with the reception of the conclusion of the story, I think it warranted a third season, even though the reception of the second season wasn't that well received. It was very much mixed. And I think we talked about it enough that we have kind of mixed feelings about it overall for pacing issues and
Hmm.
character development. But the total work of Fire Force is 34 volumes, so potentially the third season is going to flush out the remaining arcs of the manga, as well as potentially ending with the movie, since that seems to be the trend recently. But the first Fire Force season came out in 2019 with 24 episodes. The second season came out in 2020 with another 24 episodes, and it can be found on Funimation / Crunchyroll, and of course was animated by Studio David Productions. So, Sam, would you be interested in a third season since you had probably the highest mixed results or feelings about the second season? Do you think it's worth continuing?
I definitely would give it a shot. As you said before, I did have some mixed feelings about the second season. It felt more it as you said, pacing issue, it was a thing. I liked the new additions of the characters that they had on there. I forgot what his name was, but the black character with the flamey ink that could hover around on his board, he was really cool. He was a good addition. And the mini training arc that the main character and Arthur had in order to hone in on their skills, that was very interesting. But it was like the in betweens to get to those points in the story, it felt a little lacking. But I definitely would give the third season a shot. What about you? Are you gun? I think you said that you were a big fan of it. So like, did you feel as though that everything was consistent, or are you looking forward to the third season mainly for resolution of the problems of the second season?
Yeah, I think again, it's just a thing of poor, I guess, a poor adaptation. Again, it's not very present in the manga, and I think it's just one of those things of a bad translation, or at least not taking so much, or taking not enough liberty to change the pacing of the story out. Because I think we talked about this again in great detail, but it just is a oddly paced in its breaking down story beats and like dropping a bunch of exposition dumps in very odd places and expanding the lore to like a really unsatisfying way. So I think that's what season three is going to be. I think it's going to be a wraparound of the problems of the first two seasons because there's this giant mystery going on that they're teasing at, but they're not really giving satisfying clues to make you feel invested in it. So
Hmm.
hopefully it'll end up pretty well how the manga ended. But with David Productions, they're in charge of Stone Ocean this year, as well as Spring Gun, which I think
Yep,
you were
spring.
excited for later this year as well. But yeah, so it looks to be that this third season is going to probably come out in 2024, if I would be guessing. So yeah, we'll talk about this in a year or so. But yeah, the last news story for the week is that Adult Swim has announced the production of the Rick and Morty, or Rick and Morty the anime, as well as a original series called Ninjin Kamu. So the Adult Swim has basically produced or released a couple of anime or animated productions over the past couple of years by director Sano, who's known for his Tower of God series with Telecom Animation Films. So this is going to be the Rick and Morty anime is going to be an original concept. There's no direct tie to the show or from the creators Dan Harmon and Justin Roiland. So it's going to be an original work from Sano, who does seem to be a big fan since he did the anime shorts of Morty and the Shogun and the Genocider, with Morty versus the Genocider, as well as there's another one which I'm forgetting about. But uh, something Adult Swim has been doing over the past couple of years, which has been sneaking by since they released them on their service, their YouTube service, as well as showing it on their TV station. But the second part of the news story is that Sung Woo Park, who is the director of Chainsaw Man, which I just mentioned, as well as Jujutsu
Hmm.
Kaisen, is helming a anime for the production by Sola Entertainment, which will be their first production. So he's an outstanding director with this new studio, and the character design artist is the same from Afro Samurai and Ninja Batman. And basically, the story of this anime follows a former ninja who has escaped his clan, trying to live peacefully with his family until his clan finds and kills his family. Something that the basic revenge trope. But the other part of this is the twist of it is that it's a 21st century ninja. I don't know if that's like a thing, but it's really weirdly worded in the news. Is that he's a 21st century ninja going against high tech weaponry, combat cyborgs, and using his ancient skills and finesse to combat this new age. So don't know if it's time travel. Don't know if he's doing like a Ghost Rider vengeance kind of thing, Scorpion kind of thing, rising from the dead or something. But it seems intriguing enough because all we have is a promotional poster of it. So, Sam, do these two animes sound interesting to you? Would you check them out?
Ninja Kamui does. I am hesitant in regards to Rick and Morty, mainly because I saw the shorts and I appreciate it. It was like a Rick and Morty version of Star Wars Visions. I liked the story of Samurai and the Shogun, where it was just like a timey-wimey Kurosawa version of Rick and Morty. However, I'm not a big fan of the Rick and Morty versus the Genocider because the Rick that was depicted in that series it it was it was sickening to me mainly because they didn't understand Rick's character. Like they made Rick to be a loving grandfather, which is everything that Rick is not. And I'm watching it and I'm just thinking to myself, why did they let this happen? Why is this a thing? I mean, the ending was existential for sure, in a similar vein of Rick and Morty, but just the fact that they depicted Rick as a loving, wholesome grandfather who just swears every now and then, that's not who Rick is. So I'm a little hesitant to see what they're going to go. If it's an anthology, I'll probably enjoy it a little bit more. But out of these two works, I'm looking forward more towards Ninja Kamui. How about yourself?
Yeah, the Ninja Kamui does sound like the premise doesn't really interest me that much because it just seems like your bog standard cyberpunk ninja take. But again, Sungwoo Park has kind of earned his due credit for Jujutsu Kaisen and now Chainsaw Man, potentially. And again, the character design artist, again, going back to that old 80s look or 90s look of Afro Samurai, I'm looking forward to seeing that art style again. So like the names involved gets me more interested than just the premise alone. So I would say Ninja Kamui as well. The Rick and Morty fandom has kind of died down to like a very retrospective kind of hindsight to say, oh well, it was good in like 2 seasons, but then it immediately fell off. Depending on how you feel about that, because I believe Dan Harmon, one of the creators, dropped off during the seasons, as well as a switch of the writing staff as well during one of the seasons as well. So it's hard to say that maybe this was not the best time for a Rick and Morty anime. Maybe when it was at its hype a couple of years ago, like when all the Szechuan sauce stuff was going
Yeah.
on. But this seems to be maybe a late entry inside the fandom. But we'll see. We'll have more. This is just an announcement, so it has been greenlit, meaning that it's in the first stages of drafting and staffing. So we won't probably talk this about this for another year or so more when we get like an official trailer or official reveal of something. But yeah, that is the news for the week. But we have a discussion of Accel World, which is a production by, or sorry, is a creation by Reki Karhara, also known as a guy that's responsible for Sword Art Online. So this was your pick. So what's up with this?
Yes. So, again, time codes, descriptions. We are going to the main attraction, the meat and potatoes of the episode. We will be conversing about Excel World. And I had to say, like, I am glad that we are doing the voice actor spotlight on Yuki Kaji because it gave me a reason to bring Excel World to the forefront. I was a big fan of Excel World when it first came out. I enjoyed it very, very much. I feel as though I don't know why. Like I feel like I enjoy things a little bit more when they're sort of niche, and it's a bit disappointing because I know like when I was watching Excel World, not many people knew about it. Similar as Blood Blockade, Battlefront, or even last year when we were talking about the Itadan deities who only know peace. I seem to gravitate to those type of works that are battle shonens that's under the radar a bit. But I know, like back during 2012 when this came out, I was following it religiously, and I had a very good I had a very good exposure to it. Now, before I get into the synopsis, Jay, were you did you have any exposure to this franchise?
Yeah, so I was, again, this is 2012, so again, in the middle of university studies. But yeah, this is one of those things that I definitely watched with the anime club at our university. And also, it was big. For some reason, yeah, I think those niche animes like this kind of catch on and basically embeds itself inside of not anti-culture, but it definitely gains a following at convention scenes because I saw a lot of Silver Crows as well as Black Lotus designs the following year. So it very much inspires a lot of cosplay coming out. So yeah, I'm very much familiar with this. I watched all 24, 25 episodes. I have not seen the movie though. I think the movie's called Infinity Burst. I forget the
Yep,
title.
it's called Infinite Burst or Infinity Burst. Like you said, I hadn't had a chance to watch it either.
Right, because I think it came out like several years after the series wrapped up, like after everyone lost interest in it. So it was a thing of like dying popularity, and I don't believe it hasn't been fully animated, or sorry, fully adapted yet. So I'm looking forward to reading the light novel.
Yes, as you said, the light novel is still going on, and the movie, as we mentioned earlier, it's Infinite Burst, and it came out in 2016, well after the anime had wrapped up. And with that, I can go into a little bit of the synopsis that we have, and then we can start giving our thoughts and discussions in regards to this second work by Reiki Karahara. So, in this franchise, we follow a Haruyuki Arita who is the stereotypical loser in his high school. He gets bullied, and he has a bad time in regards to his body image, and he finds himself to be a loner. However, he finds some refreshment in his video game pastimes. And while playing one of these online games, he runs into the most popular girl in his class, I believe, either in his school or in his class. I forget which age or which grade she was in. I think she was in his class, and they meet up for lunch. She gets him to download another game that's known as Brain Burst. And when he installs the game, she explains to him that the game allows the user to perceive the world around them at such a speed it's as though time stands still. The program basically hijacks all the cameras in the area because this is in a time where they have uh, a very advanced no advanced type of technology called Neuralinker, where you can have an interface straight to the internet, similar to what Elon Musk is trying to do with his technology. And that's how they were able to interact with each other online and download the games and hijack the cameras. And it turns out that the program itself is a battle is a fighting game of sorts in which you have to fight other players who have the game, gain burst points so that you can maintain the ability to stop time and use that ability for whatever purpose you desire. The main, the popular girl who's known as Kuro Yukihime, she is one of the six kings of solid colors within the game, which are titles given to the highest level players within the game. And they are level nines, and the highest level in the game is a level 10. And nobody has reached level 10, and everybody, all the kings who have reached level 9 had made a truce to stay at that level because they weren't sure on what happens to level 10. Because if you lose a fight in Brain Burst, or I'm sorry, if you lose all your points in Brain Burst, the game uninstalls itself. And so, because of the speculation, nobody knows anything about the uh, the ends at reaching level 10. They made that truce. However, Kuroyuki Hime does not agree, and she had attacked one of the kings and has since then gone to hiding and wanted to recruit Haru for her exploits. And so we followed them in their adventures with this game and trying to reach level 10. The studio is made by Sunrise Studios, which is a fun studio that I really enjoy because they make all the Gundams. As we mentioned earlier, it is the source is from a light novel. The genre is action, romance, sci-fi. The themes are school and video games, and the rating is PG-13 or older. And it's also seen on Crunchyroll, Funny Animations, and Hulu. And just a reminder that the main character who voices Haru is also Yuki Kaiji, who won the Seiyu Awards for 2012. So, just to say that this work does have some backing, and even though it was made by Sunrise and it has Yuki Kaiji, as a talent, it seemed to still fly under the radar. And so I just find that kind of curious. But Jay, did you have any specific thoughts that you wanted to go into in regards to this work?
That this is such a superior version of Sword Art Online. It is mind blowing. So again, not
And it's written
to
by the same guy. It's
not
crazy.
to badmouth Ricky Kawahara any more than I already have, because following up to this episode that we're doing on Accel World, we'll be talking about Sword Art Online proper with a special guest. So I have my full thoughts with Reki in that. But about this is because it definitely shows that he has grown as a writer, or at least in an obvious way that is not so apparent. There's not so much of the things that are problematic in Sword Art Online here in present, at least for the first 3 episodes. Again, I've seen the 25 episodes originally back in 2012, but I don't know if it really holds up to what I remember it. But for the first 3 episodes, I think it very much passes the 3 episode test because of how much of a difference it makes that your video game world is augmented reality versus being isekai'd into a virtual reality world. And that
Hmm.
small difference kind of sets up the precedence that you have to deal with the real world. So you can't just ignore who you were as a gamer, because Sword Art Online functions more as a isekai than a fantasy story. But with Accel World, you have to deal with who you are in the real world and how does that clash with your avatar in the game world. And again, what the best video games or trapped in video game stories do is really sell the audience on the idea that video games are an escape, but it's depending on the player if that escapism is going to be healthy or unhealthy. And very much so in the first 3 episodes. In the first 3 episodes, you don't really get too much of that, but you see that Haru is a kid suffering with those stereotypical bullies. He has body image problems, not because he's like, you don't ever see him like overeating or indulging himself. He's just a naturally big boy.
Hmm.
And maybe he is attached to like his best friend is a taekwondo master. Oh no, he does kendo. He's a kendo master, and his best female friend is, I don't know, what does she do? Is she a cheerleader? I forgot what her pastime is, but he has some really good helpful friends, but then he internalizes himself, his insecurities, and lashes out at them. So like very subtle things inside his character that just makes him heads above Kirito as a main character. So that's what I really enjoyed most of seeing Haru as the main character in focus, especially his pairing with does she have a short name, or do we just have to call her Black Princess?
We could just call it Kuro.
Oh, Koro. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, so
Yeah.
yeah, his pairing with Koro is so endearing because she has so much agency that Asuna, again, not to compare it so much to Sword Art Online, but is that she has so much agency in these first 3 episodes. So like she actively goes after Haru after seeing his gamer score and seeing his abilities as a gamer.
Hmm.
Again, like relating gamers with shared interests is something that just happens in real life. You never really get that in Sword Art Online. Sorry, keep doing that. I'm going to stop that. But it is just subtle writing that just I wasn't aware that was going on inside of Accel World at the first viewing of this 10 years ago. But like 10 years passing and seeing how storytelling can be done well is so shocking. And I just very much enjoyed first 3 episodes for that reason.
No, it's just as you said, it's hard. It's not hard to compare this to SAO because of the same writer, but apparently Accel World is in the same universe. It happens in the same universe as SAO, but I think 100 or 200 years later. So it is within that same continuity. And I very much like what you said, how the characters, they're so much better. And with Haru, just very interesting because I was watching this show with Alonzo, past guest of ours, at the same time. And one thing that he had pointed out to me at that time was that it's not with Haru's self image, it's not only him who sees it, but it's also us, in the sense that if you look at how everybody's drawn, even though Haru is a big boy, he is drastically different from everybody else. And I really like that because it helps the viewer at least be more sympathetic to his plight and him feeling like an outsider and not really belonging. And with the emotional turmoil that he internalizes. And there are also some things that are hinted at emotionally with some of his supporting best friend characters that happen as well, that are revealed later on in the series. I would also say, as you said too, his pairing with Kuro, it feels very natural because she seeks him out, and he knows that she's just using him, but he appreciates that because she seeks him out because of his skill, right? So that's something that he is really proud of, is his skill as a gamer. And he's like, this is something that only I can do. She came to me because she saw my work and what I can do. So his the appreciation for his ability driving his character makes it so much more natural. And I really like how the alter egos that are used in the Brain Burst game works, because it is more, the whole series is more of an introspective thing, because when Haru first has that reveal of his body type, he rages against it. He's like, "Oh, just everything hates me." And Kuro sort of makes him stand back. It's like, "No, that is your heart. That is your strength. You need to rely on that." And he has that Kamina and Simone moment where it's like, I can't believe me, but I can believe her that believes in me. Like that sort of, don't believe in yourself, believe in the me that believes in you, like that sort of thing. And not only that, but like we were able to see Haru outwit and be strategic where we couldn't get that in Sword Art Online. There was another point that I was trying to make. Oh, you were talking about agency. So one thing that I really liked about this series, and we see this in the very first 3 episodes, Kuro, she's on the run from the other kings, and she can't reveal her identity. And we learn that somebody had found out her identity, and despite her being at such a disadvantage, as you said, like she still has agency. She is still making moves, and she is still confident in herself and what she can do. And that is a very good characterization. And they maintain that throughout the entire series, because we get sort of the rise and fall with Haru. He gains a superpower, it's lost from him, and he gains an appreciation for it. And on his way to get it back, he learns other people's strengths and what they do, and he appreciates them as well. It's just a very, very good series. And I'm not gonna lie, it did my heart good when I was watching Durarara, and I can't remember the name of the two characters, but you remember those two characters that were giant weebs that were always talking about ships and things of that nature?
I don't remember their names, but they're like gang members, and they travel around in a van, and
Yes,
they weebs together.
exactly. Like the two Weebs, they had a scene in Durarara where it's like, oh, the next Accel World is coming out. The fact that they had mentioned Accel World just made me jump for joy. It's like I'm not the only one who appreciates this work. So I again, like I'm sure it's very easy to ascertain that, or at least my feelings on what the verdict for this anime would be. But Jay, are there any other thoughts that you would like to divulge before we go on to our final verdict?
So a lot of, well, not complaints about. Actually, I'm going back into my Sword Art Online spiel, but a lot of what makes, I think, the first three episodes work about this is that they focus on the characters more than the
Mm.
world itself, because you get a good understanding, you get an information dump of how it works, but also you don't until the third episode, because you think like the first level of brain burst is just, or right, sorry, that the program is just, oh, you
No,
can
you're right.
manipulate
Brain burst.
time. Yeah, yeah.
You're right.
You can just
Brain burst.
manipulate time. You can kind of cheat the world and like save yourself some minutes or manipulate, because how they deal with the bully in the first episode is that they stop time essentially and then plan out how to set up the bully to take the fall for a physical altercation essentially, or no,
Hmm.
provoke him into a physical altercation and have him caught on camera essentially, because how the bullying has been happening is that in this giant world of surveillance, they found a blind spot to allow the bullying to happen. So again, it's working from a societal standpoint that you can bully people as long as you're not being caught, or the world is kind of fake, I guess, essentially,
Yeah.
because everyone has to be on a good behavior. I mean, if you want to parallel that to something later this year with Psychopaths, with the civil system, or even with the real world application of the Star Citizen system in China. But what I really enjoyed about the third episode and about that information dump about the world at large, about the nine kings, is that the coloring system is so cool that you get the idea that all the characters in the world have color bases, and the colors are kind of akin to their own temperament, because the avatar that's looking for Koro is called Scion Pile, and then his character Yuki or Haru is named Silver Crow. So it's like, okay, Pile is like a nail, and Silver or Crow is like the animal, and then she's Black Lotus, which I think is probably a parallel to Black Dahlia. I'm not sure about the
Yeah,
appropriate
that's a good call. Yeah.
representation. So even like you said, like their avatars are a representation of their own insecurities or traumas, but also they have a cool naming convention as well. So it's just like coolness on top of coolness. And oh, about the third episode about the kings, is that something that is like kind of forgotten about the brain burst system, or the consequence of it, is that if you lose that system, you lose your memories associated with the game. So that's why the
Oh,
stalemate.
I forgot that that happened. I forgot about the memory loss. I thought the game was just uninstalled.
Right, exactly. And that's why I kind of like that additional level, because you don't really, it doesn't make sense that, why would they create a stalemate just by virtue of them not knowing what a level 10 is? But the reason
Hmm.
why the stalemate exists and why her betrayal is so powerful and why she made that choice is that she values the game more than other people, maybe. And even though that might be a bad characterization, that makes for a good character. And as she views people potentially as, it's not flushed out yet, or I don't remember if it's flushed out entirely, but like you said, it's like Haru finds meaning in being a useful tool, and her being Black Lotus, or the king, the Black King, it's like that's her job, to use people for not her own ends, but the ends of, the people that work under her. And I'm like, okay, so we have a clear goal, something again, maybe not SAO is known for having a clear goal or having a motivation, compelling motivation for villains and characters and overall interactions between characters. But I very much enjoyed the third episode specifically because at the very end of it, you get this very sinister plot that Haru's female friend Chiyuri
Chi, yeah,
is
yeah.
is being wiretapped through her neural device, and I'm like, bruh, this is going deep so hard, and I think it's so weird. Again, not to talk bad about man, I need to stop saying that, but it is so weird that there's so much inner layering to what's going on in these first three episodes. So there's this giant world that's going on. There's a battle royale going on, but there's also like spying going on, and people's lives are endangered. Essentially, it's not like the death game of SAO, but to say that if you're 15 years old and why the neural link device was installed in people as babies, that you're 15 years old, and if you've been playing the game for like 3 years, anything you do associated with the game is going to be deleted. And that's such a
Oh yeah.
hardcore consequence to playing that video game, yet people play it anyways. So it's like endearing you to the characters that are risking their memories, essentially, which is maybe a little bit worse than death because your memories define who you are. But there's so much to talk about, to love about not SAO, but there's so much to love about
Sort of.
Accel World.
Yeah, Excel World. Yes, 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 yes. And I will.
I can keep talking about it because I like the Ash Roller fight in the second episode because that completely catches you off guard. Because again, you
Yes.
just think that the base layer of the game is like, oh, you can just slow down time, but then she forgets to mention it's actually an MMO fighter. So like at
Well,
the
remember,
beginning of
she
the yeah,
wanted to. With her, she wanted to ease him into it because she did try to take precautions, but and in a very natural way, he undid that precaution by accident, and that's how we end up seeing the fight. And it was sort of funny because she was like, "Oh, what we learned? You have to listen to me, don't you? Okay, moving on." Like that sort of thing. But
right. Because she's an upperclassman, so like she's speaking from experience of being older and also just being a
mhm.
ace player in the game as well. So like in the second episode, he goes against Ash Roller, who has a motorbike, and again, how is that um, manifesting like trauma? I don't know. Maybe he got hit by a motorcycle when he was a kid, or he ran over somebody. I don't know. But yeah, he goes, fights Ash Roller, loses, then comes back in the same episodes after learning how to actually fight in that world, and beats Ash Roller, and then like they kind of become friends, or at least gain mutual respect for each other. So there's a lot of gaming tactics that go into that fight that I can talk about, but I can go on and on about this first three episodes. But if we're going to answer the question that we always ask for the 10-year review, is it to be resurrected or to be buried, meaning that it's either to be recommended or just left in the past, I'm definitely giving it a resurrect.
Awesome. And I would have to say it will be a resounding resurrection for the both of us. Because, as you said, with the improved writing of Reiki, we get a proper characterizations, we get a proper video game with proper tactics that are being shown, and the way that the world is set up in the first three episodes, it is stellar and spectacular. Now, just to be fair, because Sword Out Online, the first three episodes, they were very baller as well, as the audience will learn in our review. And according to the Wikipedia page regarding Accel World had a strong start, but near the end, people were a little bit uh I'm trying to get the word for it. I guess a little disappointed. They weren't as a little disappointed in how it ended. It was just a little bit lackluster. However, looking back on it, I clearly remember that the way that the ending was done, they were asking for a second season, and they never really got it. However, from what I said earlier, how certain abilities were lost, and the characters, even though they lost something precious to them, they still had their agency, and they still worked together to regain what was lost, and you get an appreciation for other things in the process. So, despite the fact that the ending is not as good as the beginning, it's still a very solid ending from what I remember. And I think that this work is a very good anime and should definitely be a recommendation for your gamer friends. So, with that, it's a resounding resurrection of again from the both of us. And Jay, do you have any final thoughts in regards to Accel World that you would like
Uh,
to give?
I mean, just lingering on now that I'm thinking about, because I was going into this just blank slated because I did watch it before, but now I'm like remembering how the rest of the season plays out, and I think it's definitely one of those cases that falls under the same realm of like no game, no life, and there's like plenty of examples of excellent first seasons that need a second season to kind of feel complete, and maybe that was the thing, and also maybe the movie does that, and maybe a lot of people were, that's 4 years later after the season wrapped up, so maybe a lot of people didn't view it. So maybe in 2014 we'll watch the movie as a 10-year anniversary review. But yeah, just a completely wonderful experience, enjoyable time, and I can talk more about it because there's a lot of subtle things and nuanced writing going on in it. Like just thinking about one is just that when he has the nightmare before he turns into Silver Crow, he's
Yes.
flying. So it's like a subtle foreshadowing to maybe an ability that he has in the future, but all he can really do is headbutt people. And I was like, special move, headbutt, use headbutt, Silver Crow. But yeah, it's just like so much to love about it, and with the character design as with the world. And again, studio, not A1 Pictures. Who does this? Studio, oh, like
No,
on
it's
the studio.
Sunrise. It was
Oh,
Sunrise.
Sunrise. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Why it's so good is because they know how to do mech designs, and like
Oh
have
yeah.
they know how to do choreography for fight scenes. So it's just like small things like that you can just love about it. But yeah, that's my final thought.
I would give my final thought would be, and this is sort of a transition to how the next few episodes that we're going to do is I just wanted to comment on Yuki Kaiji's talent as well because I had just rewatched the first three episodes in Japanese, and he does not sound anything like his character from the work that he had from high school W.o.W, where he had won the Seiyu Award for, and their characters are so different. And I'm not gonna lie, like I think maybe it's because I can identify with Haru a little bit more, but I feel like you can you can empathize with Haru's character and hit and track his growth a little bit more than you can with the main character from high school Double D. Am I off base for saying that, Jay, or is that a good assessment?
Yeah, that's a pretty good assessment. And it's funny that speaking from like again original source materials, that High School DxD is also a light novel, and when you go down the line of light novel adaptations, you can speak of Spice and Wolf, and as well as ReZero, and it's just the wide range of good to bad adaptations and like good pacing. But yeah, for sure,
Mhm.
like the tracking of the characters is completely different, and it shows into his voice acting performance as well.
Moving forward, we here at Weebs and Weekends, we will be on break for the month of June, but rest assured, we will be coming back in July for our next episode, which is Kuroro Connect, as well as we will have a special guest for Accel World's predecessor, known as Sword Art Online, where you'll be able to get our thoughts a little bit more on the writer known as Reiki Karahara And if you would like to continue to follow our voice actor highlight for Yuki Kaiji this year, please be on the lookout for our episode Magi Magic of the Labyrinth. And with that being said, Jay, what have you got for us today?
All right, so I think what's always needed for a video game is some good taglines on the backs of the box art. So I got a little something to sell you on Accel World. Are you ready to break free? Are you ready? Truly? A brighter and better reality awaits, an adventure too big for the real world. Will you accept reality as it is, or will you fight for a better one?